All right. Hey everyone, welcome to Hopeful Wisdom. So this episode, we are taking a walk on the sparkly side. I've got my very dear friend with me today, Arielle Klein are you in Southampton or what is it called? West Hampstead?
West Hempstead, yeah.
West Hampstead. From West Hampstead, New York. She's also known as the Gem Therapist. She's a gemologist. She's a jeweler. And we're going to be talking about jewelry, of course, but also being moms with ADHD, losing weight, getting through, uh, challenges. And I'm so excited, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I wore my diamonds and I also wore my amethyst and smoky quartz today.
Nice.
I put on all my jewelry. I was like, "Yay, I have someone to wear jewelry with." So
And I am, of course, not wearing any jewelry because COVID is like, I don't put jewelry on anymore because I don't leave the house. So I
right,
know.
if you're not leaving the house, what's the point? Uh,
Exactly.
so why don't we talk about what is a gemologist and what does that
Okay.
entail?
So that's a great question. A gemologist is literally somebody who deals with gemstones. They usually are involved in the grading and identification process of the gemstones. They often work as appraisers, appraising jewelry, gemstones, diamonds, gold, etc. They'll also be in jewelry stores where they're usually the person, overseeing the jewelry buying sometimes, or the appraisal process that you're going to get from a jewelry store. And they often also work in appraisal positions for either auction houses or loan companies. There's, a few different paths that you can take as a gemologist. I've
Okay,
actually worked in all of them over the course of my jewelry career. So,
you've worked with all of them.
correct.
That's so exciting. So, do you deal at all with crystals?
So I don't deal with crystals. Unless you're talking about faceted gemstones, that all gemstones grow in a crystal form. But the kind of crystals that are very of the moment right now is not something that I deal with at all.
Okay.
Although I get that question often because of the gem therapist, but I don't deal with that kind of stuff.
Okay. And what has been your most lavish piece that you've done? I've seen some of the jewelry that you've done and it's just absolutely stunning. What would you say was your most lavish piece?
Like a custom piece?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, the custom pieces are generally for regular everyday people. So,
Okay.
they're pretty wearable pieces. I want the pieces that I do to be both, beautiful, but also like wearable.
Hmm.
I would say the most amazing jewelry that I've had the honor of, working with and being around is, I get invited to this event every year that's through the American Gem Trade Association called the AGTA Editors Awards. And it is the top jewelers from all over the country who are submitting their one-of-a-kind unique designs that are designed in a competition, that are being judged in a competition.
Hmm.
And as someone who has been blogging about jewelry for many, many years, I get invited to this event every year. It's fabulous. It's here in New York, and the jewelry is like drop dead. I mean, we're talking, not, museum quality pieces. We're talking, top of the line gemstone, top of the line craftsmanship. And I would say that that's where I see the most amazing stuff.
Okay.
Um, each piece that I work on that I custom make for clients, I love. I don't put out anything that I want it to be perfect.
Right.
So I make sure that, all the details are lined up. And, I'll always advise clients on my opinion, if I think something's going to be uncomfortable, or I think, it's not going to be good for their everyday wear. At the end of the day, I'll always defer to the client. And I do sometimes have a client who comes back to me a year or two later and says, you were right. And we need to redo this. But more often than not, clients do listen and they end up really happy. And I haven't had any issues because they just love it. And every time I run into them, they're like, oh, I love my ring, or I love my jewelry. So that's very gratifying.
That's really wonderful. So while I have you, I was looking probably about 2 weeks ago at lab diamonds, and
Mm-hmm.
I was just taken aback at how expensive they were. I was like, for this price, especially for like a pair of diamond earrings that you're just going to wear every day, I felt like I could have gone to my local jewelry store. We have in Detroit there used to be a TV show based on this place. It's called American Jewelry and Loan. I don't know
Okay.
if I don't know if you've ever seen that. There was a television show about it and
Are
on cable.
you, are you talking about Pawn Stars?
So it was on the same channel as Pawn Stars. So
Got it.
I've gone in there, and their pieces are, I mean, they're secondhand, but I'm saying you can get the run of the gamut, and you could probably get a beautiful pair of earrings for about $1,000. When I saw
Right.
the lab diamonds, we're not talking anything super fancy, but something really nice to wear every day. You know what I mean? You're looking at
Mm-hmm.
about $1,000 at that jewelry store. So when I was looking at the lab diamonds, I was completely taken aback at how expensive they are. Um,
Right.
so my question is like this: what is the difference, and why is the price of the lab diamond so high?
So a lab diamond, for all intents and purposes, is a diamond. It's just made in a lab instead of being made in the ground. So we might call it a synthetic diamond. You might hear it called a lab diamond, but it's not an imitation diamond. An imitation diamond would be like a cubic zirconia or a moissanite. They're diamond alternatives. But a
So
lab
what is
diamond,
a cubic zirconia? We'll get to cubic zirconias after.
we can talk about that after, but just to finish up with lab diamonds. So, I mean, physically, chemically, the properties of a lab diamond are a diamond. The reason you're paying less is because they've perfected a process that they can grow a diamond in a lab in a matter of months, as opposed to thousands or tens of thousands or millions of years that diamonds form in the earth. There's obviously less cachet because, anyone can go into a lab and make a diamond, whereas a diamond that grows in the ground, it had to have a variety of very special conditions come together in order to get that diamond to form, and to come up from underneath the earth and be a diamond that someone's going to mine and wear. So that's the biggest difference, just in terms of what they are. For all intents and purposes, lab diamonds are diamonds, so that's why they're expensive. They're
Okay.
about 30% less than traditional diamonds. So
Okay.
you're still a premium for them because they are diamonds. They're not diamonds. They, like I said, they're physically and chemically, they're diamonds. It's just a matter of how they were created. One is made by a human being in a laboratory, and one is made by God forming in the earth.
Right.
They're definitely a cheaper alternative to a natural diamond, and they're available for people who are interested in them. Sometimes I have clients come to me looking for them, but I would say most of my clients prefer a natural diamond.
Right.
It's about what you want. When you're talking about when you want a 3-carat natural versus a 3-carat lab, there's a significant price difference, and that's when people may choose to go the lab route.
Okay. And what is a cubic zirconia?
So a cubic zirconia is a diamond simulant, an imitation diamond, whatever you want to call it. It is another material. Cubic zirconia is actually also a synthetic. It's made, it's produced in a lab, or it's produced in a factory. There is a natural cubic zirconia, but what you're seeing on the market is not that. It's durable. It has a lot of sparkle. It looks like a diamond as much as something can simulate a diamond. But it obviously has very different physical and chemical properties that don't make it a diamond.
Okay.
And so people, who are looking to buy jewelry that looks like diamond jewelry will buy that. Sometimes, they'll buy it in a base metal, and sometimes they'll buy it in gold or silver.
Right.
And obviously you're paying much less for it, but there's also no value to it. If you go to try to resell that, you're not going to get any money for it unless, the setting is gold. You might get money for the gold setting, but that's really it. Another stimulant that's very popular right now is moissanite.
Right.
Moissanite is diamond simulant. Again, it has its own physical and chemical properties, but it looks a lot like diamonds. So people will use them, you know, in place of a diamond because they are significantly less.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. And yeah, because it happened to be when my mother passed away, I inherited all her earrings, and
Right.
she had a few pair that are diamonds. So I figured, why would I go buy a pair of diamond earrings if I just can wear the ones that I already have? But like, for
Absolutely.
example, for years I couldn't go near jewelry because I am so allergic. Like, I can only wear gold or white gold in my
Right.
ears, or else
Yeah.
they swell. Like, why does that happen?
So a lot of people have what's called a nickel allergy. Nickel is very commonly used in, you know, costume jewelry. It's also sometimes used in in gold jewelry. I mean, white gold is not something that actually exists in nature. Gold is yellow. So in order
Okay.
to white gold, they mix in other metals in order to create that white gold. Most white gold is usually like its own compound, and each company has their own recipe formula of what they mix in. Generally, there's rhodium in there, which is in the platinum family, which is a white metal, as well
Okay.
as sometimes there's nickel, which is also a white metal, and there's other various different metals. The same goes for rose gold. And sometimes they actually just plate the yellow gold with a thick white gold plating. So, you know, the negative to that is that that's going to come off and it's going to yellow. But even something that is custom formulated to be white generally will yellow as well over time. They're now making these compounds that are heavier on the rhodium so that they won't yellow over time. And they definitely stand up and stay whiter over time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's no real thing as white gold. You know, white gold is an alternative for people who want platinum and don't want to pay the price for platinum, or don't like the patina that happens with platinum over, you know, the amount of time you wear it, because platinum sort of gets this dull finish. It gets very scratched up. Gold doesn't kind of get that finish. Gold stays, you know, lustrous even after it gets banged up and worn and scratched up.
So
So
that is so interesting that you say that, because once upon a time I was a married woman and I had an engagement ring, and my engagement ring was set in platinum, and it was a pave. I don't know if you ever saw my old ring. This was moons ago. You did?
yeah,
So
I
do you
did.
remember that it was like it was pave? The center stone was a 1.3 carats. Am I saying that
Mhm.
right? And it was a beautiful ring when it was brand new, but
Right.
within the 2 years that I wore it, it was banged up a million times.
Right.
It looked so, and I always thought the platinum was harder and would resist like wear, but my white gold wedding band looked great, and my platinum, expensive, beautiful diamond ring looked really banged up within like 2 years. Is that normal? And I wasn't like, you know, doing laundry by hand with this thing. So does that make any sense? Like that it wears. I thought,
It absolutely does. Platinum, you know, is a very strong, sturdy metal. There's no
okay,
doubting that. But the wear that platinum gets is it gets like this patina where it looks worn in. It's not as shiny. It gets duller. And a lot of people aren't gravitating towards that. They don't love the look of worn in platinum, which is why people end up going with gold. Gold won't get that look. Gold will, of course, get scratched up. It'll need to be polished, but it'll still maintain a luster. It won't get sort of that worn in look that platinum gets.
right.
So it's a matter of preference at the end of the day. Also, a lot of people choose to go with gold because you are saving some money, even though the price of platinum has dropped significantly. Because
Hmm.
platinum is heavy, you end up paying slightly more or about the same, usually slightly more. So
Okay.
people generally would rather put their money into their diamonds or into the design as opposed to putting it into the metal that's holding it, when gold is just as good and slightly cheaper. And again, aesthetics. People just don't like the look of worn in platinum.
Right. So, I mean, should it ever be relevant to me again, I would probably want to go with like a white gold, because even though it's not as hard as platinum, it doesn't have the wear that platinum has. Am I understanding
Right.
correct? Okay.
In white gold is extremely sturdy. It's not sturdy, especially if you go with 14 karat. You know, the lower the carat, the sturdier it is, because the more base metal that's mixed in. The closer you get to 24 karat, which is pure gold, the softer it gets. So I always advise my clients, if they don't want platinum, to go with the 14 karat as opposed to going with 18 karat, just to save themselves a little bit of money. And it's very durable because, you know,
Okay.
what hands, you want it to be durable because you obviously are going to be using your hands a lot. And you know, what's on your hands are going to get banged up. So
Right.
the karat is sturdy, it's durable, and it maintains that luster from the day one of wear, as opposed to the platinum, which will sort of, you know, dull over time.
Right. So and you actually do the whole process? Like, do you actually put the diamonds in the setting yourself?
So I don't do the bench jeweler work. I have someone who does that for me.
Okay.
I will up with the concept and the design with the client, and then I will go to my CAD designer. I have someone who does, you know, CAD and CAM for me, which is computer assisted design. And they will then draw up a render for me, which I will then go over and show the client. We'll go over it together. We'll tweak it until we get it to that perfect point. And
Right.
then have the piece printed and polished and set, and all the process that goes through with making the final piece of jewelry once they have that approval. So this way the
Hmm.
clients kind of see it from conception.
Okay.
Um, they get to be involved in every part of the process of creating a custom piece that works for them.
And what got you started in doing this?
So, I mean, I did this for other people. You know, I worked for other businesses where I would be doing this. And I really liked doing it. But I wasn't really looking to necessarily do this as a business.
Okay.
Um, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then I had met someone, and they approached me and said, "Hey, you know, I really love your Instagram feed. Do you think you could reset my ring for me?" And I said, "Okay, sure." And it just happened from there. We're like, you know, I did their ring, and then other people started coming to me, and they were looking for this and they were looking for that. And it was all kind of word of mouth, you know, people just seeing what I was posting and what I was doing and saying, "Hey,
Hmm.
can you help me?"
Right.
And then it turned into its own business.
That's so awesome.
Yeah,
So awesome. And you are heading in a different field now, back into education?
correct.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
And what are you going to actually be doing? Or like, did you register for your classes already? Or like, are you,
So I'm in the process of my applications to my grad schools. They're in, and I'm just waiting to get my answers and find out, you know, when I'm going to be starting. I also have to study for my GREs, which I'm not super excited about.
right,
I haven't done school or testing in a long time.
right.
Um, yeah, I'm hoping to be in school either for January, or if not January, then for the spring or fall semester, depending on how things pan out, depending on which programs I get into. So yeah, I mean, that's my next step. And then I will also be working in the classroom as a paraprofessional, one-on-one with kids who have IEPs and 504s and need that extra support.
Right. And so is that like a special ed teacher?
I will be, when I'm done with school, I will have my master's in both education and special education, and I'll eventually go on to doing a literacy extension,
Hmm.
because my goal is to do literacy specialty. But it's really just a support person for kids who do have special educational needs. Sometimes
Right.
that's learning disabilities, sometimes it's an emotional disorder, sometimes it's ADHD, sometimes it's autism. It really depends. Every child's different.
Hmm.
But some children who, based on their individualized education plan, their IEP, they need that extra support person to help them get their work done. And so the district, their school district, will provide that for them. And I am brought in to be that person for them. Sometimes
That's
it's also just
awesome.
Sometimes it's just a person in the classroom too, to help all those kids. Sometimes it's, it depends really. Each job is different. So sometimes you're working one-on-one with someone, and sometimes you're working in the classroom to support the teacher. Especially if it's like what's called an inclusion classroom, where you have kids both with traditional learning needs and kids with special education needs.
Right. That's just so interesting because, both of you and I've discussed, we both have ADHD.
Yes.
I never grew out of it.
Right.
When I was in school, there would be certain subjects I could barely understand.
Right.
And then there were other subjects that I would highly excel. And at one point, my mother never did this, but the school had suggested to her, you should send her to a special school for children with ADHD, especially kids with high IQs. Because the problem was my IQ was actually pretty good. You know what I mean? Like the IQ was where it needed to be, but when it came to certain subjects, I just couldn't wrap my brain around them. Like I struggled to do math. I struggled to read, but like other concepts came to me very naturally. Do you find that that's common with ADHD?
I think that is classic with ADHD. I think that kids learn differently, even, neurotypical, as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're neurodiverse, which is kids who have ADHD or maybe have autism or a variety of other, learning challenges. The traditional way of learning may not work for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've come a long way since we were in school, but I still think there's a lot of work to do. And that's kind of what pushed me in this direction, is just, having it, parenting it, and realizing that there's a lot more that can be done for kids who maybe don't learn traditionally, and that, the current classroom settings that we have, the current learning model that we have, that is the mainstream learning model. I'm not talking about Montessori or things that are, more, I'm talking about traditional, which is where most kids are being put, doesn't really quite address the needs of every learner. So I think that that's very normal. I also just think, we all obviously have strengths and weaknesses. Some people are very math oriented and it just comes very naturally, and some people just have to struggle through it. But I absolutely think that there's a way of teaching things that you're for different types of learners to understand.
Right.
And I think that the current way that we teach a lot of subjects is, really teaching to the middle. It's not teaching to the highest, not teaching to the lowest, not teaching to the different. We're just teaching to the average. And how many people are actually average? Almost
not very many.
Right.
Not very many. What do you think about, I take medication and I take Vyvanse now. I took Adderall and had severe reactions to Adderall. I can never take Adderall again. I had something called Adderall-induced psychosis.
Okay.
And for about 3 weeks, I wasn't making like any goddamn sense. I was just in a medical, and I kept taking the medication, and thank God I realized, like it was getting more severe, and I realized something was really, really, really wrong. And I ended up, seeking medical attention. But I thought to myself, to go through something like that, because I have a, disability that's not my fault, it's just it's just incredible. And, here's the thing. I'm taking Vyvanse now. They went through, basically Vyvanse was going to be our first try before we went into, because I actually have to be medicated. Like it's one of those, I didn't grow out of it. I've gone off of I've gone off of ADHD medication, and I see a huge difference in my productivity and what I'm accomplishing at work, organizational skills, being awake on time, to have the kids organized and out the door on time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I realized, like, so their first try before they wanted to move into like the Ritalin family was Vyvanse, which is, worked really well for me. But when I get down to the crux of it, before Adderall made me sick, nothing worked better for me than Adderall. Like, even now, I wish there was a way I could take it without losing my gourd. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
It was
totally get it.
a terrifying
I mean,
situation. And it
it's
took
really scary.
it took two doctors. We didn't find out right away that Adderall was the only culprit. You know what I mean? Like, at first we
Right.
had to go through the, did I develop another disorder?
Yeah, of
And
course.
the good news is I didn't. And as soon as I got off the Adderall, I started making sense again. It takes Adderall 3 days to process out of your body. But
Right.
it was very scary. It was definitely very scary. And I know some people have tremendous success on Adderall. And
Right. I
until
mean,
I
I
got
think,
sick, I had tremendous success on Adderall.
yeah, I mean, I think it's just medication and the chemistry of our bodies is its own science. I only know from personal experience, some drugs are going to work great for you and some aren't. And sometimes you could be taking something for years and then it just stops working or it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And that's why it's so important to have a really good doctor who's managing your care, which it sounds like you did, and they figured it out very quickly, thank God.
Right.
I think that just happens. And I think also, especially for us as women, our hormones are always changing, our bodies are always changing. So, all those shifts can actually affect the way our medications affect us, which is why it's so important, again, to have a doctor who understands that and understands you and understands how you metabolize things.
Right.
So I think it's really a very, very complicated process. I think, going through it is complicated. Um,
Right. Like, I wonder, my kids, I've talked with their teacher, like, because I've always been open about it, keep me in the loop if you
right,
think that there's ADHD that needs to be addressed. And I see my kids, and they're just like, I saw them last night. We had quarantine school for a week
right,
after Thanksgiving. So last night I had to tell them one time, let's pack up our things and get ready for tomorrow. And they did that, and they did it. And I'm just like, when I was their age, I would have to, off of medication. I just couldn't. You know what I
right.
mean? I just couldn't
Yeah, of
follow
course.
direction. It was
Yeah.
too it was too difficult. And
There
what
was
I
too much
find
going on.
exactly, and what I find interesting is, anyone who watches the show knows that I'm a convert. I couldn't I learned how to read. I learned how to read because I needed to. It's did I ever tell you when I was 6 years old how I was introduced to Judaism?
I think you told me something about the Holocaust. You heard about the Holocaust?
I heard about the Holocaust when I was 6. We had one of those out there hippy dippy teachers, and for some reason, she felt it was appropriate to teach us about the Holocaust. And I went
Right.
home and asked my mom all about Hitler, and my mother's like, I don't know. I don't know shit about Hitler. He was really bad, though. That was
Right.
pretty much the extent of my mother's knowledge. Um, and so that's how I learned to read, reading about the Holocaust. I mean, the good news
Yeah.
is there were like grade level books like Number the Stars, The Diary of Anne Frank,
Yeah.
but like that was Jewish history, basically, or World War II was how I learned to read.
Yeah. That makes
And
sense.
my math skills shot up greatly. And this is kind of what I'm trying to teach my kids now. Like, my kids know what real estate is. They know that
Mhm.
that's what I do for a living. And
Great.
I've noticed that in the 8 years that I've been in real estate, my math skills have skyrocketed.
Right.
I think I struggled with math my entire life until I went into real estate and I learned how to do math in my head, but it was like something that I had to
Yeah.
make the decision that I wanted to learn, like percentages of things. And it's just interesting at like the way,
Right.
you know, the mind, the way you're going to learn something. Like I would
Yeah.
honestly tell you in the past 8 years, my math skills have gone up tremendously. Whereas before I would still, like, I knew math, you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what 7% of 400,000 would be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So,
I mean, I think if you haven't been taught that properly, which a lot of kids have not, and they
right,
grow up into adults who don't know it, that's part of it. But I also think that like having practical experience, like I also got much better at math and percentages working in retail jewelry because I had to learn.
right,
You don't have a choice. In school you have a choice, you can choose to tune out, but in real life you don't get that choice. It's either,
right,
learn or die trying.
right,
So I think, for those of us who don't want to die trying, we learn no
right.
matter what. We figure out a way to understand things and that's it. So yeah, I totally hear that and agree with that. I think, when push comes to shove, we rise to the challenge.
Right, for sure. Speaking of push coming to shove and rising to the challenge, you and I have both kind of hit a point with being with our weight, and we're
Right.
both on a program. How do you now, for those watching the show, Ariel and I have decided that we are not going to disclose which program publicly that we are on. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to reach out to either she and I privately, and we'll tell you all about it. But there's just so many programs on the market, and we found one that works for us. So how do you feel since starting the program? I mean, you guys, long story short, it requires a lot of water, heavy discipline, and there is meal replacement, but there's several programs like that. So how do you feel since starting the program, and what was your rock bottom? Because I remember my rock bottom.
So, I mean, I feel amazing. Taking off weight has released a lot of pressure on my body, on my joints. I tried for a lot of years to be okay with myself.
Me
I
too.
fluctuated throughout my, 20s and early 30s in terms of my weight. I would lose weight, I would gain weight, I would lose weight, I would gain weight.
Mhm.
It was definitely very yo-yo for me. I did not have a good relationship with food. I had lost, understanding my internal cues of hunger and fullness. And I just didn't feel well. I had so many health issues. I had really crazy high inflammation that no one could figure out what was going on. I got diagnosed with a variety of chronic conditions that I knew were, even if I lost weight, were never going to go away. I'd just be stuck with them, but that losing weight would significantly reduce their severity and the symptoms of them.
Mhm.
So
Right.
I was just at a point where I was, I had no energy. I was parenting from the couch. Every day felt like really hard just to drag myself through. I was tired all the time.
Mhm.
And I didn't feel good, and I felt that like food had become this part of my life that was disproportionately important, like it
Mhm.
wasn't about nourishment. It wasn't about, feeding my body. It was about like food almost becoming a form of worship. So,
Mhm.
that for me was very eye-opening. And I said, I need a change. I've tried everything. I've tried, the intuitive eating, and I've tried, working with
Mhm.
nutritionists, and like none of it's ever really stuck for me. The intuitive eating just kind of, there was always something missing there. I could never fully like embrace it,
Right.
and embrace being the size that I was. And for me, that was obviously very personal because, there are people who are living in a larger body who are really fit and really healthy, and it works for them. And then for those people, they have nothing to worry about. But I wasn't one
Right.
of those people. I was a person living in a large body who was miserable. I was a person living in a large body who never felt well. I was a person living in a large body who had a host of health issues. and was, really worried that those health issues were only going to get worse. And I spent a lot of time fighting against it. I would see a doctor and they'd say, have you ever thought about bariatric surgery? And I'm like, are you crazy? I'm not that fat. But, the reality was I couldn't
Right.
see it for myself.
Right.
And so when that started happening, in the beginning, it was me being like, no, these doctors are fat shaming me.
Right.
But I started to realize that like maybe one or two of them were, but the majority of them, saw that my health was suffering, and, they realized that a big part of it was my weight. And I thought back to myself, did I feel this way when I was smaller? And the answer was no. And I said, I can struggle and I can fight and I can convince myself that like fat people, which it absolutely 100% is. There's no denying that.
Right.
Or I could accept the fact that my body being in its current state just isn't working for me.
Right.
And that's really how I came to the realization. It wasn't so much about a number on a scale. It's still not about a number on a scale.
It's not about a number on a scale for me either at this point.
It's about feeling the best that I can feel. It's about having energy. It's about being able to do things that I couldn't do 45 pounds ago.
Right.
And I've talked about this on my own social media, like with COVID, everyone started bike riding. My husband, the kids, they all had bikes, and I got a bike too. And, when I was in my largest body, I just felt like I couldn't balance on the bike. I just wasn't comfortable. And then, within even just losing 13 pounds in the very beginning of, my program, I was able to get on the bike and start riding it. You wouldn't think 13 pounds would make such a difference, but it was huge.
It's a huge difference. I'm off the scale 3 pounds and I feel the difference at just 3 pounds.
Yeah. So, I think you don't realize how much pressure and strain the extra weight that you're carrying around can sometimes put on your body. And obviously, again, it's very personal to a person's body type. For me, I'm a very, very, very small person. I'm 5 feet tall. And so carrying around so much extra weight was really, really hard on my body.
Right.
And so for me, that was it. And more than anything, it was really about my family. It was about wanting to be around for my kids for a long, 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 long time. Heart disease runs in my family. My grandfather died from a heart attack. She was now that she's older. Thank God she's okay. But, she had some heart scares. And so that also was just a reminder to me, because I'd already started a program when I found out about that. But even before, I knew that was, a health-related condition. My grandfather on my father's side was a type 2 diabetic because of his weight.
Right.
So I knew that like I was predisposed to these kinds of conditions, and that, being obese would only contribute to me having an easier time getting those conditions. And I didn't want that. I want to live a long, healthy, full life. And I knew that I was not going in that direction at the size that I was at.
Right.
And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to try one more time. Like I was ready to give up. Like I said, I was ready to just go for bariatric surgery. And I joined all these bariatric surgery groups, and I started reading about all the side effects and doing my research. And it no joke scared me. And I thought, I don't know that I want to do this. There's got to be something better. And then, I found the program that I'm on, and it really it changed my life, in a way that nothing I'd ever done had changed my life. It changed the way I thought about food. It changed the way I related to food. It changed the way I thought about myself and my body. I went from being a person who had a mindset of scarcity to a person who has a mindset of abundance. And I realized, I feel like I'm a much more positive person than I was before. So I think that, changing the way you nourish your body can change a lot of different things about how you relate to everything.
Right. No, I definitely agree. I had a situation happen back in March that, was pretty eye-opening to me. And I realized that I had gained weight. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I was aware that I had gained weight. I was dating somebody, and he was from out of town. We had FaceTimed over the phone. And I even said to him, listen, I've put on weight since my recent pictures. I was very upfront, very open about that. Anyway, he was in town for a couple of, I think it was about a week and a half. It just wasn't, it just wasn't Basharat. You know what I mean? Great guy, just not my husband.
Yeah.
And when I broke it off with him, this is what I've just found. I think this was like the icing on the cake for me. When I broke it off
Right.
with him, he had mentioned, it would have been like he needs someone, as he said, more petite. And I'm like, well, why aren't you dumping me then? You know what I mean? Like, once
Yeah.
I broke it off, his like bite back was, I need someone more petite. Then go find someone more petite. But I realized, I don't want to have conversations like this again, where I feel like I have to
Right.
explain myself to someone. I know I'm not a size 2 anymore. I'm not, you know what I mean? And
Right.
I toyed around with the idea of getting on the program for a little while, and the icing on the cake was in that conversation. But I lost about, let's see, I lost about 12 pounds from when I
Okay.
broke up with him at the end of March until the summer. And that's when I just said no more. And I started the program.
Right.
And I'll tell you the truth, I've had a rough time on it. I've had a rough time sticking to it. I've been doing the program more diligently the last week, and I'm seeing the weight come off, and I'm starting to feel better. And I'm noticing that, like, as you said today, I have to eat during the day. That's one of my biggest problems. I have
Yeah.
a shake waiting for me as soon as we wrap up, because I'm just like, you know what? It's time to take this brass tacks and live by the book, literally.
Yeah.
Literally
Absolutely.
live by the book.
You're gonna any plan you're going to do, you need to commit to it to 110%. Nothing is going to work if you do it, halfway. And that's
Right,
everything in life.
right,
It's all about consistency, showing up every day and doing the things you're supposed to do. And
right,
when you do those things, see results. And it may not happen overnight. It may take a couple months. I didn't lose 40 pounds in a week. It
right,
took several months to 45 pounds. But I showed up every single day for
right.
myself and that's what got me to where I am. And that's my plan for the rest of my life. I finally
Right.
made a decision that I wasn't going to talk about fair, unfair, my genes, my this, my that. At the end of the day, the only thing I can control is how I react and
Right.
how I do things. And so that's where we are.
And like the mistake that I made on the program, and I know this is my fault, is I would have a few really good days and then
Mm-hmm.
reward myself with something garbagey.
Right.
And you have to get out of the mindset of rewarding yourself like this is setting you back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Food should not be a reward. Food is about
right,
nourishing your body. Food should taste good. You should enjoy it. I'm not saying you shouldn't, it shouldn't be cardboard that you just eat just because your body needs nutrients. But at the same time, food is not a reward for good behavior. It's not a reward for weight loss. It's not
right,
a reward for anything. We need food and we deserve food. It's
right,
not something that we can earn. You don't need to
right.
earn your food. That's a
Right.
really,
That's what no, but that's what I've been doing, like earning,
yeah,
just like you said, earning my food. Like, okay, I've been on program for, this amount of days and it's been going really well. But now, I can treat myself with, unhealthy something. Like one of my favorite things is pistachio ice cream in like
yeah,
crepes. I ordered that like twice in a week a few weeks ago. And I'm just
yeah,
like, this shit's enough. I can't
yeah.
do this anymore.
Yeah, and you definitely come to realizations at some point that like some foods just don't work for you, and it's
Right.
okay to say like I may eat them from time to time and know that they're not ideal for me. When you reach your goals, but realize that like these really just don't make me feel good and I don't like it. And that's,
Right.
I think that that's a very healthy point to get to. I don't think just because something is available means you have to eat it.
Right.
You can admit that like there are certain foods that just don't work for you, even though they
Right.
taste delicious. So I think there's acknowledging that, you know, you get to control things, and like, these are choices that you're making. No one's telling you you can't have something. You're choosing not to have something because it's not in line with what you want from your life.
Right. No, it's what it all boils down to. Well, I want to say thank you so much for being a guest today and sharing all of your insight with us, from everything from jewelry to education to just eating habits. It's been a pleasure having you on. Definitely, you know, come by again. And we finally did it. We had a half hour of technical issues, but my God, we finally did it. And the show is usually longer. Today we're recording on Zoom, which caps us at 40 minutes, and we're approaching the 40-minute mark. Yeah. So we definitely have to wrap up, but I wanted to just say thank you so much. And how do people get in touch with you if they are interested in?
They can shoot me an email at thegemtherapist@gmail.com if it's jewelry related or really anything related. That's a really good way for them to reach me. They can also reach me on Instagram, either at the Gem Therapist or at Arielle_Meira, which is my personal account. I respond and check Instagram all the time, and I check my emails all the time. So those are probably the best ways to get in touch with me if people have questions or, you know, need advice about anything. And again, it was a pleasure being on. Great talking about.
Thank you so much.
Things. And yeah, it was great that we finally got it to work.
I know. Technical issues are a part of the show at this point. Yeah. Like, it's just a part of the show. Well, thank you so much for being on. And for those of you who watch regularly, you know, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you wish to do a private session with me, you know how to reach out on Hopeful Wisdom on Facebook. Wishing everyone a wonderful Monday and a very happy Hanukkah. If anybody wants some jewelry, holla at your girl. For the Hanukkah season, Christmas and Hanukkah, everybody loves diamonds.
True.
Diamonds and gemstones.
You know you want it.
You know you want it. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being a guest, and we'll see you all soon.